What if I told you your brain on porn looks almost identical to a brain on cocaine? If you don't know me, my name is Krishna. I'm someone who quit his porn addiction after many, many years of struggling with it. And I'm just teaching the lessons that I learned along the way. And I make these videos so that hopefully you can quit too, and you don't have to suffer as much as I did. The first time I saw porn was I was around 8 years old, right? And it started off with literally just pictures, right? I'm pretty sure that's how a lot of guys started, right? Just looking at pictures on their phone. For me, it wasn't my phone, it was my mom's phone, right? So it made it even worse. And I remember this because we went on a trip to Texas, right? This was on a family trip to Texas a few years ago when I was around 8, 9 years old, right? And I genuinely don't even know what I was thinking. I literally have no idea. Because for some reason I'm just gonna grab my mom's phone, go hide in the hotel closet. How you go into a hotel room and they usually have closets where you can store your coats, your clothes, stuff like that. I was like, hey, let me go hide in there and then just look at porn. What the frick is going on, bro? And it started off with just pictures, right? That's what it started off with. And then a few years later, I'm watching God knows what on my 4chan and these Rule 34 sites. I've graduated to full, almost slightly messed up porn. And this video is not necessarily just about my experience with that. This is mainly just a video about me explaining to you just the neuroscience and the psychology of how porn works. When we watch porn, or when we do hyper-stimulative activity, what happens is that our baseline of dopamine over time continues to lower. And the mechanism of how this works is when we watch something super stimulating, we get, if this is our dopamine baseline, we get a huge spike initially like this, right? Because it's rising. Because porn feels good, it feels good to jack off, it feels good to watch that kind of content, right? It feels great. So we get this big spike. And then what happens immediately after you bust a nut? What happens? Well, you start to peak like this, you bust a nut, and then you feel terrible, right? And so then there's a huge dip, right? This is our baseline. It's rising, it's rising, it's rising. We bust a nut, we feel terrible. There's a huge dip. And the thing is that it usually goes below the baseline. If this is our baseline, we get this huge spike. We stop. We feel bad about what we've done. We feel guilty. We're like, why did I do this? Like, you start to contemplate your own life's existence at that point. And it goes below your baseline. So now your baseline has been lowered. Same thing happens when we do it again, right? And that cycle just continues and continues and continues until eventually you have brain fog, you have depression, you have anxiety, right? And you're like, damn, I feel so bad. Why? Well, it's because your baseline of dopamine is so low that, I mean, the best way that I can describe it is that life just starts to feel gray almost. It starts to feel numb. And your tolerance builds, right? You need more of the drug just to feel normal. You need to consume the drug at some point just to actually just feel good, right? I remember I needed to watch it to feel normal. When I was watching it, that's the time where I would feel actually like how a healthy human is supposed to feel on a daily basis. And so your tolerance, it keeps going up and up and up until eventually you're watching freaking God knows what. You're watching gangbangs, you're watching threesomes, you're watching people doing stuff with animals. I know that might sound crazy, but that's how it was. It was really, really bad. And the good thing about this is that this is a learned behavior, right? All of this that I just described, it's all learned. and it can be unlearned, right? Because our brains is quite frankly amazing, right? Because of neuroplasticity, because of our brain's ability to rewire certain neural connections. We can quit this, right? Of course we can. And neuroplasticity is really amazing because this is exactly how it works. So this is how at least I've experienced it, is that when we do something hard, right? When we exercise, when we talk to somebody that we're afraid to talk to, we do the homework assignment that we know that we should be doing, but we aren't doing, we do that piece of work that we don't really want to do, but we do it anyway, right? When we do hard things, if this is, again, our baseline, it feels quite painful, actually, right? It feels quite painful to do that. So there's a little bit of a dip at first. But then, right after you do it, you feel amazing, right? So there's your baseline, there's a little bit of a dip after you do the hard stuff. But then it rises above it, and it basically shoots up like this, right? Because you complete the workout, you do the assignment that you were supposed to do, and then you feel amazing, you feel awesome about yourself, right? And now you have a higher baseline of dopamine, right? Because your baseline was here. You had a little bit of a dip because you did the hard thing. You had a really, really painful leg workout, for example. But then you recover, you build the muscle, you feel awesome about yourself. And so now your baseline of dopamine is increasing. So now it's here. And then you just keep doing that again and again and again. And eventually you start to feel happy for just existing. Isn't that great? Isn't that freaking fantastic? And so the action step that I want to give you is to replace that one screen-based dopamine activity, right, which is porn. I want you to just replace it with a real world dopamine hit. So that could be exercise, that could be doing, it could be reading, that could be doing something that you know you should be doing but aren't doing, right? Whatever just popped into your head that you know you should be doing but you aren't doing, whether it's cleaning up your room, whether it's doing that assignment that you know you're supposed to do, whether it's doing that piece of work that you don't really want to do. Go and do that, because then you'll actually feel good about yourself for doing it, right? And that's, again, that's what neuroplasticity is, because our brain is plastic, right? It can be molded into whatever shape we want it to be. And so if we want to increase the likelihood of a behavior occurring, then it makes sense that we need to do that behavior more often, right? If we want to decrease the likelihood of a behavior occurring, if we want to make it less likely that we do a certain thing, then we need to do less of that certain thing, right? Because repetition is what creates those neural connections, those stronger neural connections, right? That's why, if you practice an instrument, for example, or if you practice a sport, if you do something kind of technical that requires a lot of technical skill, when you first start off, it feels kind of foreign, it feels kind of weird. It's like, what am I doing? But over time, as you get the reps in, right, it starts to feel more natural, right? Because those neural connections, they're solidifying more, right, through neuroplasticity. If, at least for me, for example, I remember I used to be a pianist back in there. I used to play a lot of piano, right? And I would memorize 4 or 5 pieces for a recital, for a big ass recital that I was supposed to play. Now, a few years later, I can't really remember or play any of them. Why? Well, because I didn't strengthen those neural connections, right? They're probably still there. And, if I play them again, or if I see the sheet music or something like that, yeah, then maybe I'll remember, maybe I'll be able to play after a few weeks of practice. But after I stopped, I just forgot, right? Because the neural connections weren't solidified. And so the same thing applies to this. If you keep watching porn, if you keep doing that, you're training your brain, you're solidifying those neural connections inside your brain. And so it's going to make it way, way easier. It's going to increase the likelihood that that behavior occurs in the future. So again, your action step, again, previously, replace that with one thing that gives you actual, real dopamine, like how humans are supposed to live, right? Your brain can heal, right? because neuroplasticity is an incredible thing. Your brain can definitely heal, and you can definitely quit this. If you want the step-by-step instructions, literally the step-by-step system that I use to quit, I haven't watched porn in 3 years, right? I used to go from relapsing every 1 or 2 days to now not having even touched it in 3 years. If you want that full step-by-step system on how I did it, then you can click the link in the description below. I hope this video helps you, man. Take care.